Hey, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. Today, I'm joined by my friend Joe Fairless. Joe is a real estate investor. He teaches small businesses how to operate successfully. He's a fellow podcaster in the real estate space and much more. He's got his hands in a bunch of things. But he's a corporate refugee like probably a lot of you listening, so there'll be some good lessons in here as well. It's really hard to stand out as a real estate investor in this industry or even a small business, and Joe has a ton of marketing experience and advertising experience. As before he started real estate investing, he was an advertising executive at some of the leading agencies in America, and he's bringing those lessons into the real estate space. Today he's going to tell us more about himself, and he's going to talk to us about how you can differentiate and brand yourself to be more successful in your business, whether you're a real estate investor or even any sort of small business. So there's going to be some great lessons and some great nuggets today. Before we get started, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be on the show. Glad that I was able to have this conversation with you and all your listeners.
Yeah. Thanks for being here today. And so I think you probably the first person to join us from a vehicle.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm probably the first person who is joining you immediately after traveling from New York City last night to Columbus, Ohio, this morning-ish, and then to Cincinnati more this morning. Yeah. And then arriving at the parking lot 1 minute before we were supposed to have our conversation. So I probably broke two new things in that stretch.
Yeah, the cool thing is, so you're actually at the property that kind of got you out of corporate America, right? You're kind of parked outside of your apartment complex. Is that right?
I am. Okay. That is correct.
All right,
and
cool.
Unfortunately, we have Wi-Fi in the Welcome Center, so I am using the Wi-Fi from the Welcome Center in my vehicle.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for being here. So, what some folks may not know is I recently joined you on your podcast for kind of a special 4-part series, and Joe runs the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show, and had a special segment, kind of a 4-piece segment. And tell us the name of that again, Joe.
It's called the Best Flippin' Series Ever, presented by Patch of Land, and it's all about how to flip property successfully. And I had you as one of the featured panelists, and along with 3 other panelists, and it was about how to find the best flip, how to fund, how to fix, and how to actually flip the flip.
Yep. Awesome. So check that out. We'll add some links for that down below the video here for those of you that are watching now. But Joe, before we kind of get into the topic of the day, how people can better brand themselves, and it's kind of the plague of real estate investors is many of them don't even have a brand. They just are kind of flying by the seat of their pants. And you and I both know the importance that relationships play in this business. And if you don't have a brand, then it's hard to have a relationship and be memorable. But before we get into that, kind of tell us your background. It's a unique story, and we'd like to learn more about you.
Yeah, and my background's certainly relevant to this topic today, so I'm happy more so in this show to talk about my background than others because it might not be as relevant. So my background is
most of the other shows just aren't relevant. Period, though. Mine and yours. That's it.
Exactly. I mean, we're totally focused on FlipNerd right now. And my background is that I am from Texas. the DFW area, actually Fort Worth, and even more narrow, Aledo, Texas, if anybody's familiar with the Fort Worth area. And I went from Fort Worth to in high school to Texas Tech and graduated. And then I quickly from there, once I graduated, moved to New York City. And my major was advertising with an English minor. And I graduated in 2005. I climbed the corporate ladder relatively quickly, where I was the youngest vice president of a New York City advertising agency before my 30th birthday. And at that point, I stopped and I reassessed, what my goals are, what my focus was, and really if I was fulfilled, because I had reached my goal of, monetarily, I'd reached my goal for my salary, and I'd reached my, goal for, title. And I was like, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan, and Tony Robbins talks about the 6 human needs, and the last 2 lead to fulfillment, growth and contribution. And I didn't feel like I was growing and as much mentally, emotionally, I guess physically is not really the thing in work or this career. And I didn't feel like I was contributing. And I'm not saying that that's not possible with advertising and working at ad agencies, because it is, because people find a completely fulfilling career in that. That's just not how I'm wired personally. I'm just not meant to be doing that. Mm-hmm. So I needed to see what else I could pursue that led to more of that fulfillment, more of that contribution. So I started testing some different things. I did stand-up comedy in New York City.
Do you have any jokes for us?
Oh my God, I hate telling people that because they always like.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back.
Yeah,
to that.
I talked. I'll just say I talked about my my roommate who turned out to be a prostitute, and I had no idea she was a prostitute whenever I lived with her. So
you just kept having all these friends over, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Always paid rent in cash, all that good stuff. Never late though. Never late with rent. So I did that. I started interviewing people, successful people, and learning about their careers. And so I started writing a book, How to Have a Remarkable Career, Join the Remarkables. I started, I had been investing in single family homes. And I saw that I had some success with single family homes in the Dallas Fort Worth area.
Okay.
But I realized that I wasn't going to get to my goals as fast as I wanted to if I was going to if I continued to go at the pace I was at, and that was about a home a year or a home every year and a half. So I knew I had to buy bigger and quicker, or at least bigger.
Yeah. And
so that's where I got to. I started my own company. I left advertising, started my own company, and my first career venture flopped. I wanted to be a career consultant for marketing, advertising, and PR, college students and young professionals to help them climb the corporate ladder. But I quickly realized after spending $3,000 on a website that college students don't have money to pay for a consultant to help them get the job. So I mean, clearly a flawed business model that I learned from, and I learned a lesson. You have to have clients before you have a business, or at least a product.
Yeah.
And so then
you have to be going after clients that have money.
And you have to be going after clients that have money. Exactly. So then I started my own real estate investing company where I raise money and buy apartment communities, and I closed on my first place 6 months after starting the company. And that was about a year and a half ago, and now I'm working on my second deal, which is likely going to be a development deal.
That's awesome.
Then I met you.
Yeah. And everything changed, right?
And now
I want to point out a couple things that you said here, Joe, that I hope people will, we have, I'm sure my show is like yours. We have a lot of veteran people that listen, and there's a lot of new people, a lot of people that, aspire to leave their job or aspire to find a way forward. And I know that you feel very much like I do, is you want people to achieve those freedoms that, that you and I realize now, and why we left corporate America. So I want to point out a couple of really important things that you just said. First off is that you really just started doing this a year and a half ago. And I know you control millions of dollars in real estate at this point. and you kind of left a career that, you know, was lucrative for you, but not something that you were passionate about. So I think people can't hear that enough. I mean, I think there's people that I've had on the show, and I've only been a real estate investor for 6.5 years, but I've done hundreds and hundreds of deals. And I think that overwhelms some people when they assume, well, you're so far ahead. And, you know, at this point, I've been doing it for 6.5 years, but 6.5 years ago, I had never bought a house in my life. I mean, I had no experience, and you hadn't done this yet. You bought a few houses, but not to the scale to that you're doing it now, and not to the scale of the opportunity that you have going forward. So I hope that that inspires some people to take action and kind of get after things. Another thing that you and I have in common is right before we started real estate investing, we started another business that failed. And I think, you know, it takes a special person to try to start their own business and jump out there. It really takes, I'm not saying this to call myself a special person, but what I'm telling people is don't let fear of failure get in your way, because probably one of the best things you can do is fail. Just try to fail quickly so you can move on, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And test as quickly as possible, as you said. And you know, it really doesn't take a whole lot of time to get some momentum going and to get you well on your way. It's really just about getting started and getting small positive milestones. Even if you have to manufacture those positive milestones, manufacture them in your mind. It's all about just the momentum. And most importantly, if it aligns with what you really love to do, if you're really interested in it. And, you know, it's interesting. I just went to a Tony Robbins seminar, Unleash the Power Within. And you know how we always hear, find your passion, do what you're passionate about. And it's sometimes it's paralyzing to hear that, because it's like, okay, what is my exact passion? But what they talked about is it's just passion stuff you enjoy doing.
Right.
It's passion's an emotion. So what are some things that you enjoy doing? And then it doesn't have to be like your end all be all, but just do stuff you enjoy doing, and then you're going to be successful.
Yeah, and I think too, I think you'll probably agree with this. And this surprises people sometimes when they hear this, and I haven't said it that many times, but when the times I've said it, I was like, people probably are surprised by that. For me, it's not about the real estate.
Correct.
That just happens to be the vehicle that I've chosen.
Yes.
But I've chosen it for a number of reasons. One, it kind of gives me some of the freedoms that I want. Two, there's really huge potential opportunities. And three, I think I've just kind of found a way to where I'm able to make my biggest mark. So I think in terms of the things that you're passionate about, sometimes it also has a lot to do with what you're passionate about that real estate might enable you to do.
Completely 100% agree. For me, real estate is you call it a vehicle, I call it like a mechanism to get me to where I want to be. I love aspects of it. And I love working with the people in real estate, because as you know, I mean, real estate's a totally relationship focused business.
Yeah.
You could have the same deal from 10 different people, but if you know the actual seller, then you're going to get the best terms, because sometimes it's not even about the money or what the sales price is. It's about the types of terms or whatever. And I love the relationship aspect of it a lot. And really, it's real estate. I mean, for me, my ideal job, and this is where I'm headed, is to be on Shark Tank, to be a venture capitalist, where not only is it real estate, but it's other types of startups where I'm mentoring people who are working on their startups and helping them out. So it's a certain aspect of real estate that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, great. Well, talk about how you've kind of integrated what you know about relationships, branding, a lot of those things into real estate. And then let's kind of get into, the topic of the day was kind of teaching other people how they should start thinking about branding themselves and how to build those relationships, how to foster those relationships to help them be more successful.
Yeah, well, what I would say is that the most important thing is to know who you are, and then based on whoever you are, let that light shine, and really illustrate that through your brand. That's really it. I mean, if we were talking about a startup that is, I don't know, then my advice would be different based on the type of client that or customer that you're looking to target, and kind of align with what resonates best with them. But with real estate, it goes back to what I mentioned before you asked that question. It's about relationships. It's about people. And in order to have a connection with somebody, you have to be authentic. In order to be authentic, you have to, be true to who you are, obviously. So it's important that your brand, your real estate brand, is true to who you are, because they're going to see you online. They're going to read about whatever blog post you have. And then when they meet you in person, if it's not congruent with what they've seen so far, you're going to throw them in a tailspin, and you're not going to get the types of transactions. You're not going to get the type of funding. You're not going to be as successful at all with what your potential is.
Right.
Not to mention that you're not going to feel as good about what you're doing. Whereas if you're true to who you are and you're just letting it live, baby, you're just doing your thing, and this is who you are, then that is what you're going to find the most fulfillment in. That's what you're going to really enjoy, and consequently, that's where you're going to have the most success.
Yeah, I've talked a few times before to different guests and things. We talk about branding, and there's a big part of branding that's not necessarily the brand of your company, but it's the brand of who you are, what you stand for. And so I think a lot of people tend, when they hear branding, they think of my company brand. What does my logo look like? But a lot of it is because of those relationships, who you are, and people know that I can always count on this person, or whenever I see a deal from, this guy, I should look at it because I believe his numbers and I believe he's, honest, in a space where a lot of people, make up numbers to make their deal look good.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those things are important. So maybe start to share some kind of advice on how people can apply that in the real world, like how they can apply it in their business.
Absolutely. So the first and foremost is you, and I'm going to start very basic, and then I'll go into kind of next level stuff.
Right.
The very basic thing is you've got to have an online presence. Period. You must. No questions. And it doesn't have to be a super complicated thing. It can simply be a logo that you get designed on Fiverr.com for $5. There's another website called Logo Garden that can do like web hosting and also do your logo. And so you got a logo for $5. You need a website. You can go on Wix.com. My first site was on that. That was free. And hosting is, I don't know, it's like $10 a month or something. I'm not quite sure. And you can buy a domain from Wix or from GoDaddy for like $10 for like 3-4 years. And at that point, you've got really all you need. Now, if you don't have design skills, then you'll need to bring on an intern or pay a designer a couple $100s to do that. At that point, you've got a functioning website and a web presence. So then it's like, okay, there's the presence. Now, what do I do with it? Because no one's going to discover it on their own. Well, for the most part, no one will discover it on their own. And that's where you implement, and this is where we go like a little next level. That's where you implement what I call friendship marketing. Some people call it content marketing, but it truly is about establishing a friendship, because we do business with people who we know, like, and trust. Everybody's heard that. And in order to know, like, and trust people, you've got to treat them as though they are your best friend, even though you might not have even met them before. So how would you treat people as your best friend? You would give them information that adds value to their life. So what does that mean? Well, if you're in the multifamily space like me, then if I'm targeting investors, then I'm constantly giving them information, not only related to multifamily, but having people who I interview who can add value in their life from a diversification standpoint.
Yeah.
So, storage units, or maybe not even real estate related. Maybe it's stocks, maybe it's bonds, maybe it's investing in startups. So being the resource that continually adds value, even when it doesn't serve me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that it's not about a transaction. It's about the relationship that I establish, because a transaction is skin deep, but the relationship, I mean, that sinks in, that stays with you. And the key is to continually add that type of content. And it totally depends on the specific, customer or friend that you're looking to, create, the type of content that you provide. But then it's providing that content, and it's providing it on a consistent basis.
Right.
The key is consistency, because, and I'm sure this happens to you all the time, Mike, where people come up to you, you've never met before, and they're like, I feel like I know you.
Right.
And it's like, wow, I understand what you mean though when you say that, because think about who's your favorite movie, your favorite actor,
Oh, you put me on the spot here.
or actress.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I'll say something like Harrison Ford. How about that?
Harrison Ford.
I don't know.
And you've seen enough Harrison Ford movies where you've seen the Red Hunt for October. I think he's in that one, right?
Yep.
And other movies. And if you were to see him in real life, you'd be like, Harrison Ford. Hey, it's me. It's Mike. How's it going? It's like there's an instant moment in time where you feel like Harrison, and that's because you've seen all of his movies, and you've been immersed with his stuff, not on a consistent basis, but during the time when you were immersed, it was like some emotional stuff where you were into it. And it's having those types of moments with people in a scalable way that really develops and creates these friendships, and the friendships are the key to the success of your company.
Yeah.
So when you come at it from an authentic standpoint, and you match up authenticity with creating consistent, overwhelming value, boom, you've got a business that will stand the test of time.
Yeah, and I think if we kind of apply that to, there's a lot of parts of real estate, obviously, that are very transactional, very outside of multifamily where you operate, but a single family, when you buy a house from somebody, there's like a 1% chance you're ever going to buy a second house from that person. I mean, unless they're an investor and they have a bunch of rental properties, but when you deal with a real estate agent, when you're selling a house, or their appraisers, or their clients' lenders, you almost are never going to deal with those people again. But I think when you kind of set the tone to, I'm going to be helpful, I'm going to put good value out there, that it carries over even into those kind of transactional type relationships, just because you're so used to being, I don't know what the word is, you're just used to being kind and sharing and let's figure this out, and not so close-minded as to, I don't care anything about you, I just want to get this done, that it kind of carries over. I mean, you kind of you get some bad juju on yourself if you,
Yeah, and what I would say is it sets you up for the next phase in your business too, because let's what we talked about earlier. Real estate for us is a vehicle or a mechanism for larger things, right?
Right.
And say it's launching a platform where you bring on other vendors, and you're looking to work with them in the future. Well, when that happens, then you've got these great relationships that's been established, and you can simply reach out to them, and you're starting off really well.
Right.
Another example being I was just working on a development deal. It didn't pan out. I spent 11 months of my life working on it. Thus is the life of development. And one of my consultants that I paid to help me with the project, I worked with him towards the tail end of it. And because he has worked with me for so long, he actually didn't charge me a lot of what he could have charged me because of our relationship together. And I might not work with him again, but he knew that he wanted to invest that type of monetary commitment to me because in hopes of, I actually don't know why, what his motivation was. But I imagine it was because he's a good guy and because he sees a long-term business potential.
Yeah.
And you never know where that might go because of how our business is constantly evolved.
Yeah. And what it is, I mean, I know personally there's certain contractors or vendors that I work with, and when I have a good experience, even if I don't need them again, I truly in my mind, and I'm anybody that operates a podcast like we do, you have to enjoy being a connector because that's kind of what you get out of it, right? But so maybe not everybody feels this way, but with me personally, I kind of go out of my way to recommend them to people that might want to use their services just because I had a good experience. And I'm like, I haven't talked to this. There's people that I recommend now that I haven't talked to for years or haven't used for years. And I tell people, I haven't used this guy for years, but when I did, it was a great experience. And I recommend them to everybody that, ever asks if they need help in that space. And hopefully that comes around for that contract. And I'm sure it does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, how do people, we're talking about some things that are, some of it is fairly high level, but some of it is, I guess maybe give some advice on where people can kind of take action today to take some time to think about how they operate today or how they're going to operate if they start their business, and just some kind of getting out of the gate kind of advice on how they're hearing this now. What do they go do to kind of start moving in that direction?
Well, it depends on where they're at in the stage of the process. But so let me go through a couple different scenarios. If you don't have a brand, then simply first ask the question, who do I stand for? What do I want my company to stand for? And what are my principles as a person, as a company? And then give that as a creative brief. And when I say creative brief, just tell the designer to design a logo based on that. Now you've got your logo, and boom, you're off and running. There's your color palette, the logo, all that good stuff. Then design the darn website. Now, if you've already done that, if you already got a company and you're like, okay, I've got that, but I'm looking to scale it, I'm looking to go to the next level, then the next level for me was the podcast. It's incredible. I wouldn't know you if it weren't for my podcast.
Yep.
I wouldn't be having this conversation if it weren't for my podcast. And
there would be an emptiness in your life.
It'd be very dark right now in my life. Yes. Yes. Although I wouldn't have broken the speed limit driving from Columbus to Cincinnati in anticipation of being late, so that's a good thing. But I didn't get a ticket, so I guess all's well.
Good.
But I would say for somebody who is looking to scale their business, create something. If it's not a podcast, if that's not your thing, that's fine. But create something that can reach thousands of people and give outstanding value to them. It could be a newsletter. It could be a blog, it could be a podcast, it could be an event, a meetup group, in person, whatever it is, or it could be any number of those combinations. Do whatever you enjoy most.
Yeah.
I enjoy the podcast format because I just like talking. I feel like I can connect with people a lot better than if I am blogging on a forum.
Right.
I feel like that's a lesser degree of personal connection and intimacy, getting to know people. An event would be best, but it's not as scalable initially. You could take an event and then you could turn that into a podcast where you've got a built-in audience and you grow it out that way. I mean, there's any number of ways to slice the darn thing, but specifically create something, or if you already have a podcast, then what can you do to either enhance the podcast by bringing on more interview guests, because that's how you get the most exposure, by the way, for your podcast. You bring on guests, and then those guests, just like I'm going to do whenever I get, whenever this episode airs, I'm going to share out the FlipNerd podcast. Right. And that's how you scale the business. So if you've already got a podcast, then do more interviews, or change the formatting, or bring on a sponsor, a partner who will help promote on your behalf. If you've already got a blog, then bring on guest bloggers and have them guest blog on your blog. Find ways to reach thousands of people in an outstanding way. There's any number of ways to do that, but that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think and even if you start small, I'll give an example. Some people know that I've done this, but many years ago, I started doing some little seminars at houses that I was rehabbing. Like, just come watch me rehab this house. We're going to meet there 3 times. I called it Rehab Live. You come watch, I would invite my investor list, promote it in some of the RIA clubs. And, we usually have 30 or 40 people that would come 3 times. We just bought the house and it's disgusting. And, don't wear flip-flops, come halfway through and then come at the end. If anything, inside of real estate, and even all the trades that kind of serve us, general contractors, plumbers, foundation companies, roofers, it's so easy to demonstrate what you do. And people get value out of that. It's a kind of an educational opportunity / entertainment opportunity, and people remember that if you kind of gave that value to them.
Yes, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. I love that idea.
Yeah. All my ideas, Joe, are just simply brilliant. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Well, that's why I'd be living in a very dark place. I'm very fortunate that I was fortunate to come across you.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're about out of time here, but any kind of final words that you want to share, and then tell us a little bit more about how people can learn more about you, your podcast, and any of the other things you're working on, where they should go.
Final words would be, I'll stay on topic and theme, and that is, be true to who you are. Go with what comes naturally to you from a branding standpoint, because that's what you're most comfortable with. That's who you are. And if you're a funny person, then add humor. Like, it doesn't have to be a stuffy business. Just enjoy it. If you're, very serious and analytical, then make it a serious and analytical business. Go with who you are. That's my final advice to wrap it up. And then as far as how people can get in contact with me, well, as you mentioned, I've got the podcast, Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show. Definitely check out the series with Patch of Land, one of my favorite companies. If you don't know about crowdfunding, then check out Patch of Land, and perfect for flipping. And you can go to my website too, joefairless.com, and say hi, and I'm happy to do whatever I can to help you out.
Awesome. So we'll add links for all those things you just talked about down below the video here for those of you that listen and weren't able to write it down, but we'll have them all below the video on FlipNerd.com. And Joe, hey, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you again, my friend.
Thank you, Mike.
Don't get any speeding tickets. All right, we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, thanks a lot.
All righty, bye-bye. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.